And the Oscar goes to... What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another tier list video. Today I am doing a ranking of every Best Picture winner that I've seen. Obviously, there are tons out there that I haven't, but I've seen around 40 of these. More so modern than not, but I have seen ones as far back as the 1940s, so this is just my tier list ranking of every Best Picture winner I've seen based on my thoughts on the film. This is not some objective ranking. This is just my personal experience with the film. Before I get into this, though, be sure to hit that like button and comment down below your ranking of all the Best Picture winners you've seen. What is your favorite and least favorite Best Picture winner? Subscribe to that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean quite a lot. And if you want to watch movies and TV shows with me, you can do so on my Patreon. I'm currently working through Stranger Things, but I'm going to watch other movies and shows very soon. Look forward to continue growing that community, and your support over there means a lot. Feel free to go check out my podcast with my girlfriend Cam as well. We have weekly episodes. It's a ton of fun. Without further ado, let's rank these Best Picture winners. Alright, so the tiers I have today are S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier, the standard tiers. And again, there's about 40 of these movies on here. I'm ranking them based on my personal preferences. Let's do this thing. Starting off, we've got Spotlight. This was a 2015 film, I want to say. It stars Mark Ruffalo, Rachel McAdams, Michael Keaton. I mean, Liev Schreiber's in this film. It's loaded. It's loaded. I would say this is a B tier movie. It's a very solid watch. It's a very heavy watch. I don't think I'll ever watch this movie again. The subject material is quite a lot to take in. It is a dark, depressing film exposing some pretty dark activities with Catholic priests. It's a tough watch, but I think it's a necessary watch. It's one of those like safe Best Picture winners, like, yeah, it's one of the better made movies of the year, but it's not one of those like, yeah, that's a super big standout movie for me. It's a necessary watch, but it's a very depressing watch. Next, we've got Oppenheimer. This film just won Best Picture the other day. This is the most recent Best Picture winner. It won 7 Oscars, finally got Christopher Nolan his Oscar, RDJ and Cillian Murphy both won for their performances. The score won, the cinematography won. This movie racked it up at the Oscars for a reason. It's actually my personal favorite movie of 2023, and the more I sit with this film, the more it climbs on my all-time favorite films list. I've seen the film 3 times, and I'm gonna watch it again here soon. I even read through the screenplay because I'm just so fascinated by this story. Growing up, history was always my favorite subject, and so I was just entranced watching this story and seeing the different perspectives presented throughout the film. It's an S-tier movie to me. I was blown away by this movie. I mean, as the credits rolled, I was like, I think I just watched the movie of the year, and sure enough, it ended up winning Best Picture, but I listened to that score constantly, and it's just such an entrancing watch. It's beautiful, but it's haunting at the same time. Dialogue-driven, but it's masterfully written. It is a darker film with subject material that's not for the faint of heart, but I think it's a necessary watch like a lot of these Best Picture winners are. And to me, it's a movie that 10, 20 years from now, we'll look back and say, yeah, that is a classic. I think in 30 years, it'll be one of those must-watch movies that we show our kids when they're the right age. So shout out Oppenheimer. It's quickly becoming one of my favorite movies. Moving on, though, we've got No Country for Old Men. What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss? Fun fact about this movie is I was in 12th grade and I was in AP Literature, and I was supposed to pick a book to do a report on, and so I picked No Country for Old Men. I didn't read the book. Sorry to upset you book readers out there, but I didn't read the book. I watched the movie for the second time, I think, because I'd watched it before, and I did a deep dive on it. You know, I had to write all about Anton Chigurh's character, and basically the inner workings of the film. I just was also reading the spark notes of the book so that I didn't miss anything if they switched it up, but I did well on that assignment, and ever since taking a deeper look into this film, it's definitely one that is a must-watch. It's the Coen brothers, and I think Javier Bardem gives his career best performance here for a reason. It won him the Oscar, and this movie is like 2 movies in one, but it does it effectively. It's like you switch perspectives midway through the film as there's like a huge twist. You're just like, wait, what? What happened? This movie's tense, it's gritty, and Anton Chigurh is one of the most terrifying villains. Many actually say it's the best representation of a psychopath ever put to screen, and I'm not gonna argue. It's definitely in consideration. I will say No Country for Old Men. This is so tough. It's either top of A tier or right at S tier. I am going to say top of A tier. I really love No Country for Old Men. It's right there. You know, S tier I'm reserving for like my personal favorites, but this is an excellent movie and a must-watch in my opinion. One that I actually wasn't so fond of the first time I watched it. Then I watched it again and I did that whole project and it made me appreciate the movie in a whole new light. Moving on though, we've got In the Heat of the Night. Norman Jewison directed film, I want to say. Rest in peace, actually. He passed away last year. This stars Rod Steiger, Sidney Poitier. I have it on Criterion, and it spawned a whole television series, I believe, after. I would say like In the Heat of the Night's a really solid movie. but it's nothing special. I'll put it in C tier. Like, I enjoy my time with it. I've seen it once. I don't know if I'll watch it ever again. It's your pretty run-of-the-mill, like, detective in a small town trying to solve a murder case. It's during a pretty tense time in terms of racial division in America, though, so that plays into the story overall, but it's nothing special compared to a lot of these other films on this list. Moving on, though, we've got Braveheart. This is a movie that I love to quote. William Wallace is just that guy. This is one of those epic films. It's one of those dad movies, and there's a fair share of dad movies on this list, but this is one that growing up, your dad or parents would probably have on like AMC or one of the cable channels, and it would just be on throughout the day, and it would run for like 5 hours because of all the commercial breaks they would add in. But Braveheart's masterfully made. It is just epic in scale. It's got some of the best battles I've seen in a film, and it's devastating what ends up happening in this film, but it's great. I gotta go S tier with Braveheart. I'm gonna put it right behind Oppenheimer right now, just because Oppenheimer, I've watched it 3 times within the span of less than a year, and Braveheart's just an all-time epic film, a must-watch. I could quote the whole William Wallace speech, but you'll have to go watch a recent episode of the podcast to see me do it, because it takes a lot out of me. Next we got Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. I've seen the movie once. It's Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu directing, but he does it in that one-take style where the whole film looks like a continuous take, and I think that's effective for what the movie's trying to go for. This was also a pretty personal film to Michael Keaton, based on the actual subject matter. The more I think about Birdman, the less I'm inclined to go watch it, but I would say Birdman is B tier. I actually would go above Spotlight with it, just because you're inherently invested with the one-take style of the film, and Emma Stone and Edward Norton are great too. There's one scene with Edward Norton where they're like going through a play, and the camera takes us through like behind the scenes onto the stage. It's actually surprisingly riveting. Whiplash should have won Best Picture that year, though. Next, we've got Platoon. This is an Oliver Stone-directed war film that portrays the horrors of the Vietnam War. It is one of the must-see war films for sure. Obviously, you can see on the poster that's an iconic shot from the movie that's been parodied and referenced in countless media since this film came out. Platoon's going in A tier. I'm going to put it right behind No Country for Old Men. It's one of those must-watch war movies. Loaded cast, very heavy thematically, though, and will make you kind of sit in silence as the credits roll because it's just a lot to take in. It deals with PTSD and trauma and really the harsh nature of war. A lot to take in. Next we got Casablanca, the oldest Best Picture winner that I have seen. This film came out in 1942. Yeah, I mean, the movie's great. It's a must-see movie. Got some of the most iconic lines in cinema, you know. Here's looking at you, kid. Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine. I watched this for the first time in like 2017, and I watched it again in a class in college, and I've seen it like 2 or 3 times since then. So Casablanca, to me, it's a quintessential movie. I know that it's trendy to like hate on really old films when people say they like them, but like this is far from a pretentious movie. A movie that has stood the test of time for almost 100 years. I mean, it's been about 80-something years since this movie came out, and it still holds up today. It's a slower moving film. That was just the way those movies were back then. I mean, pacing and, you know, attention span for audiences has changed over the years, but it's going in A tier for me in the middle. I'd probably put No Country above it. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Next, we got Gladiator. What we do in life echoes in eternity. Can't wait for Gladiator 2, but at the same time I can, because I don't know if it's necessary. Gladiator's an S tier movie. I think, do I like Gladiator or Braveheart more? That's the question. That's a question. Gun to my head, if I can only watch one for the rest of time, I think I lean Braveheart, so I'll put Braveheart right above Gladiator, but man, this is another one of those epic dad movies. Same situation, it's on cable. I was like 10 years old and I saw glimpses of this movie and then ultimately ended up watching it. It might be Ridley Scott's best made movie. Joaquin Phoenix plays Commodus, and I don't think there's a more despicable character in film. There's probably a handful, but he's in the conversation for just outright despicable human. You want to kill him. I mean, there's no way to say it. You want this man dead. This movie explores the idea of vengeance and how it can ultimately consume oneself. It's obviously action-packed, but beautiful watch. I'm really hoping this new sequel doesn't taint the legacy of this first. But I'm optimistic. Call me crazy, I'm optimistic. Loaded cast, Ridley Scott returning. Hopefully he's got the juice for that. We'll see. Next we got West Side Story. This is one of my favorite film musicals of all time. I've really grown fond of the 2021 remake directed by Spielberg, but this classic still, it's got a special place in my heart. I listen to this soundtrack frequently in my car, and I'll find myself singing it randomly throughout the day if I'm, you know, just walking around editing. People probably think I'm a lunatic, but it is what it is, you know? West Side Story is S tier. I know that it's getting heavy up there, but these movies won Best Picture for a reason, right? Most of them, at least. West Side Story, I'm gonna put at the back of S tier, but it deserves that from me. With the 2021 film, I appreciate elements of this more, but they're both so good. I gotta represent West Side Story, and that might not be the only musical that's in S tier, that's all I'm gonna say. Moving on though, we've got Argo, which I watched once years ago, so I have vague memories of it, but I've technically seen it, which is why it's on this list. I would say Argo is like C tier. I wasn't blown away by it. It's kind of one of those safe Best Picture winners. It's not like one of the best movies I've ever seen, but it's definitely intense, especially in the third act. I like the premise. If I'm remembering correctly here, Argo is like a movie, but it's all a front so they can go rescue some people who have been kidnapped. And so yeah, I would say C tier in the heat of the night goes over it. Honestly, I haven't watched Argo or thought about it since like a year or 2 years after it came out, so it's been a long damn time. Moving on, we got The Silence of the Lambs. This is a loaded tier list. There's no other way to cut it. We have some all-timers here for a reason, and Hannibal Lecter is one of the most menacing characters ever. No denying it. I would say this movie is A tier for me, and I'd put it right above No Country. It's not like one of my personal favorites that I go to all the time. That's kind of how you get into S tier for me, the way I'm doing this ranking. But I acknowledge this is a perfect film. I haven't seen it in years because, again, it's very disturbing. It's not for the faint of heart. The movie will make you queasy for sure, but Hannibal Lecter, played by Sir Anthony Hopkins, he won the Oscar for a reason. This is one of the few films to ever win the Big Five Oscars, and that's director, picture, actor, actress, screenplay, rightfully so. It is a haunting watch, but it is a very effective thriller, borderline straight-up horror movie. If you're not a fan of cannibalism, though, this movie's not for you. Next, we have The Hurt Locker. This is a very intense movie about disarming bombs. I would say The Hurt Locker is going in B tier. I'd probably go in the middle of B tier right now. I remember Jeremy Renner probably delivering his best performance in The Hurt Locker. He had Anthony Mackie in there. It explores, again, PTSD, the horrors of war in a way. I don't know if it is the best picture from that year, but it's a solid watch. That's why it's in B tier. Are The Hills Alive with The Sound of Music? I'm thinking so. That's the next movie here, The Sound of Music. I'm going S tier, and I know it's getting filled up there, but The Sound of Music is an all-time musical. I listen to the soundtrack all the time in my car. My girlfriend and I sing it, and so it's definitely got a special place in my heart, but I'm also just a musical lover, and I still remember the first time I watched The Sound of Music fully. It was like 2016, 2017 probably, and I was enamored. I was like, oh, that's where this song is from. That's where this song is from, because I'd never fully given it the time of day, and it's quintessential musical without a doubt. A must watch if you are a fan of musicals, and it's just a great American film all around. It's a must-see movie in my opinion. Moving on, we got Slumdog Millionaire, which I would probably go B tier with. Actually, at the top of B tier. Slumdog Millionaire is an entertaining ride. It's a crazy ride. And it's Danny Boyle. His style shines through here. You've got those shots of like flashbacks where it's almost like they stacked shots together. It adds like this strobe effect essentially where characters look like they're moving like this. A lot of that takes place in the flashbacks, but Slumdog Millionaire is a very interesting premise. You've got obviously the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game going on, but every question you flash back in this character's life played by Dev Patel, and you see how it correlates to his answer. Very fascinating watch. Next, we got The Godfather. I'm gonna make him an offer I can't refuse. All-timer. I haven't seen it in years. Because of that, I cannot go S tier, I don't think. I know I probably just got shot by someone in the comments. I still think The Godfather is an elite film. I just would watch everything in S tier over it. The Godfather is going in A tier. I would put it probably right here. Very, very well done movie. And honestly, when I rewatch this as an adult, I haven't seen this since I was a teenager, I probably will have a completely newfound appreciation for it to the point of it maybe climbing into S tier. But I quote this movie all the time growing up. It's another movie I watched with my dad growing up. Yeah, it's an epic 3-hour mob film. Pacino, very young but great in this film. It's iconic for a reason. I don't think it's the best movie ever made, but it's an all-time classic for a reason. Next, we got Forrest Gump. I adore this movie. There was a point where I watched this movie like multiple times a year. Can quote this movie front to back. I've seen it dozens of times. It's arguably Tom Hanks' most iconic performance. I've got a soft spot for this movie. I'm doing what I need to do. Forrest Gump is S tier. I'm gonna put it right here. I really do love this movie, and I always have, and I don't get the hate. I get there's backlash because it beats Shawshank and Pulp Fiction. Any of those three movies could have won. This is one of the great feel-good movies of our time. Most people have seen this movie and can quote it. It's stood the test of time for a reason, folks. I think Forrest Gump is great and deserves all the love it gets. Next, we've got A Beautiful Mind, coming off the heels of Gladiator. This came out in 2001. I'm gonna go as C tier with it in the middle. I remember watching this movie in psychology class. There are some plot twists that got me good. There's nothing special about this movie. Ron Howard directs it. There's not a lot of flair to it. Definitely one of the lesser films on this list in terms of being an outright standout. But next we got The Bridge on the River Kwai. Another one of those movies that is like a dad movie. I'd go B tier, top of B tier. I really dig Bridge on the River Kwai, and part of that could be because I watched it with my dad for the first time. But Sir Alec Guinness, who plays Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, is in this film, and it is a classic war film. If you like prison break movies and war movies, this is for you. If you like The Great Escape, this is about as close of a comparison as I can give you. If you like The Great Escape, watch Bridge on the River Kwai. If you like Bridge on the River Kwai and haven't seen The Great Escape, watch The Great Escape. Next we got On the Waterfront. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I saw it once. I owned it on Criterion, but that quote stands out. It's very, very solid movie. I would go B tier with On the Waterfront. Probably right here. I'd put Slumdog. Actually, it's right here. I'd put it right up here in B tier. Bit of a slower burn because it did come out in the 1950s. Now, I'm not saying every pre-1970s movie is slower, but this one definitely takes a while to really sell you. But Marlon Brando's great. I'd argue he's maybe even better in this movie than he is in The Godfather, as hot of a take as that is. Lawrence of Arabia is going to be my first hot take in this video, and I don't enjoy that I have to do this. And I'm sure there's some old heads that are going to be like, oh, Chris, you just don't get it. You're too young, you young cat. I don't care. It's D tier for me, and I hate that I have to do this. Lawrence of Arabia, one of the longest movies I've ever seen. I think it clocks in right below 4 hours. I was trying my damnedest to really like this movie, and for reference, this was at a period of time in my life where I was like taking pretentious classes and I was really trying to like really read into the movie, and even then I was like, this is not for me. The scale of this film, for the time period, unmatched. It really utilized widescreen and it is immersive. The movie, on the other hand, I think it moves at a snail's pace. It's just not my cup of tea, and so because this is how I rank them based on my favorites, D tier. I'll never watch it again. I'm glad I saw it the one time. Will never watch this movie again. Really just took it out of me. It was a workout to get through this movie. Mental workout, draining, and by the time it rolled, I was like, I don't think I can watch that ever again. Next we got Moonlight. La La Land should have won, but Moonlight is still a really, really good watch. I'm gonna put Moonlight in B tier. I'm actually gonna go right above Slumdog Millionaire right here, probably. Mahershala is in the movie for like 10 minutes and he won an Oscar. He's that great. He has that much of an impact on the film. It's a coming-of-age film that is relatable in a sense of we all grow up, we all have love in our lives and have to move into new situations in life, and friends come and go, you know, situations come and go. It's a human story. It's a very solid watch. It's not like a personal favorite of mine, but I do respect the movie, and it won Best Picture, so gotta tip your hat to it, even though I think La La Land should have won. Next we've got Midnight Cowboy, another one of those classic movies, not remotely my cup of tea. This movie's like an acid trip. I had no clue what it was about when I watched it. Didn't realize it was as artsy as it was going to be, and my favorite part about this movie is Everybody's Talkin', the song that is played throughout the film. Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight are undeniably great here. This movie's just not my cup of tea at all. It's like borderline an art house film at times, which is fine, but it's very trippy and bizarre. I would go above Lawrence. Actually, I'd probably put Lawrence of Arabia above it. Midnight Cowboy was not my cup of tea. I was bored to tears, and I was just like, this is not my thing. I know it's people's thing. It's not my thing. Moving on, though, we've got Green Book. I didn't hate this movie. I know a lot of people did. It became popular to hate on Green Book. Should not have won Best Picture. Should not have won Best Picture. A Star is Born was robbed that year across the board. That's the movie, to me, that's really stood the test of time of those nominees. Nowhere near S tier. It's not A tier. It's not even B tier. It's C tier, probably, because I enjoyed it. I thought it was an enjoyable watch, and, you know, Mahershala won an Oscar. He was great in the movie. He won the Oscar, so I even thought Vigo deserved the nomination. I'd go C tier with it. I'd probably put it right here, from what I remember. Have not had the desire to watch it in 6 years now, so that if that tells you anything, there you go. Nowhere near the best movie of 2018. It really shouldn't have won, in my opinion. Moving on, though, we've got One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is a tough watch, but it's like a 5 out of 5 movie. So because of that, it's going A tier. I would put One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest probably right here in A tier. It's Jack Nicholson's best performance to me. Over The Shining, over The Departed, over, you know, his role as Joker. This is his best role, in my opinion. It's another one of those movies that won the Big 5 Oscars. Nurse Ratched in this film, Despicable Human. I've talked about quite a few Despicable Human on this list. She's near the top of it. But man, the movie ends on a note that's like super somber and depressing while simultaneously being uplifting. There's no other way to put it. It is a journey. You just gotta go watch it if you haven't seen it. It's a bad, crazy movie. It's one that I need to own on Blu-ray and watch again maybe in 10 years. I don't know. It feels like a every decade type of watch, once a decade. Parasite won Best Picture for the year 2019, and I saw it in theaters. It was the first foreign film I ever saw in theaters, I want to say. And it's not one of my all-time faves by any means, but it is an A-tier movie. I'd probably put Parasite right here. right above Platoon in A tier. I mean, it blew me away in the theater, specifically the reveal in the middle of the film. People had said, you gotta go watch Parasite and stay on board because about halfway through the movie, something's gonna happen. And I was like, I have no clue what this movie's about. Is it gonna turn into a full-fledged horror film? Is someone gonna get possessed? And then you realize the meaning of the title as the film progresses, and you're like, man, clever stuff. It's a good one. Next, we've got $1 Million Baby. Might be like one of, if not the most depressing movies ever made. I've seen it once. I probably will never watch it again. It's been, again, referenced and memed and parodied in countless sitcoms. I think of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for reference, but I would probably go top of D tier. I mean, it was a good one-time watch, but it is such a draining movie. I genuinely never will watch this again. I wasn't like blown away by it or anything. It's slower moving and not even in the conversation of best boxing movie ever made. Next, we've got American Beauty, which won in 1999. This is a movie I've seen twice. And the first time I watched it, I was like, I gotta watch that again soon because I was unsure of how I felt. And I watched it again, and honestly, this is like one of the few instances where legitimately, like, the real life actor actually impacts how I feel about a movie. I usually am able to separate the two, but knowing the truth about Kevin Spacey and then his actual role in the film, it's very unsettling if you ever go and watch American Beauty. I struggled to erase Kevin Spacey's past history in real life from my mind with the subject matter of this film. It's uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable watch. It's darkly comedic in a way, and it sort of tackles the idea of going through the motions in your everyday life, and basically this dude has a full-on midlife crisis and breaks down. But it's not a movie I ever see myself going back to. I bought the Blu-ray, sort of an impulse buy. Maybe I could watch this again and have a new appreciation for it, but I don't know. Over the years, I've really thought about it. I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to watch this again. So I'm gonna go C tier with it, probably right here. American Beauty, I liked at a point in my life. It's a weird one though, guys. It's a weird one. Then we've got The King's Speech, which somehow beat The Social Network, Inception, and Toy Story 3. Beats me. I have no clue. This movie's solid. Get to see a pretty run-of-the-mill biopic of sorts. It does not hold a candle to any of the movies I just mentioned. Like, pretty much every other movie that was nominated should have won over this. I look at The Social Network in particular, to me, is the standout of the year. Inception is right there, though. The King's Speech, I'll go C tier, like right here. Fine movie, should never have won Best Picture. I think we can all agree that in retrospect, they got it wrong. Next we have Unforgiven. This is probably the one movie on this list I remember the least about. I watched it in 2015, 2016 with my grandpa. He had a bunch of DVDs, and one of them was this, and I was like, oh, that's a Best Picture winner, and I was like, let's watch this. He likes Westerns. I was like, let's do it. So, barely remember it. Feels weird even talking about it. So by default, I'm just gonna have to put it in C tier. I'll put it right here because I do remember the finale of the film. Morgan Freeman, Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman. There's a great shootout near the end. I gotta watch it again through a different lens almost a decade later, and I'm sure I would appreciate it more, but Unforgiven, Western won Best Picture. Who would have ever thought? Moving on, we've got Titanic. This is the highest grossing Best Picture winner of all time, a top 4 highest grossing movie ever made, and of course, Titanic is beloved for a reason. I don't really have many issues with Titanic, it's just not one I visit as much. This is difficult. I would go top of B with it. 8 to 8.5 out of 10 movie for me. Yeah, it's 3 hours and 15 minutes, and you get to see the Titanic sink and Jack and Rose fall in love over the course of the film. So, yeah. Then we've got The Return of the King, the second highest grossing Best Picture winner ever made, and the film that caps off the greatest trilogy of all time to many. I'm gonna put this in S tier, and I'm going right, actually, this is tough for me. I think it's gonna have to go at the top of S tier, guys, right now. Oppenheimer, I love, but I can't put it over Return of the King right now. Return of the King is a perfect conclusion to that trilogy, and it's arguably not even my favorite of the trilogy. I love Fellowship. The more I sit with it, I'm like, Fellowship of the Ring might be my favorite. Two Towers is outstanding. I mean, this is about as epic as you can get. Every character has a beautiful send-off. Multiple moments get me tearing up. My friends, you bow to no one. That hits. You've got Sam carrying Frodo to the top of Mount Doom. There's just so much payoff in this movie. Of course, you've got the epic battles and characters owning who they were always born to be, specifically Aragorn, Frodo. But I mean, it's just a beautiful way to round out this trilogy in a highly satisfying manner. Like, this is one of the most acclaimed films at the Oscars for a reason. It's an all-time great. It's the top of S tier for me right now. Then we've got Everything Everywhere All at Once, an interesting one for me. I saw it in theaters, really dug it, haven't watched it since. It won all the awards, obviously, last year. You know, a lot of the acting awards won Best Picture. I mean, it was an award to darling. It might be one of those movies, and I could just be misreading this, but I think this is the case. I think it's one of those movies where I wanted to like it, so I went in and I was like, there's no way I'm not gonna like this movie. And so I was kind of gassing it up in my head. I was like, oh, I gotta like this. Yeah. And then I walked out of it and I was like, yeah, I really liked it. Haven't watched it since. I don't know. Did I even like the movie? It was undeniably on the artsier side. That's not a bad thing. It's a bizarre movie. For those who've seen it, you can agree, like, it is wacky. It's you know, creatively unique. It's artistic. So did I actually resonate with it that deeply, or was I like, I have to like this movie? I don't know. So we're just gonna go safe and we're gonna put it in B. I have not seen it since theaters. I'm gonna go right here in B tier. Actually, Moonlight's gonna go over right now. Everything Ever All at Once, I mean, I remember being like, yeah, it's like a 9 out of 10. If it was a 9 out of 10, if I liked it that much, I would have watched it again. It's been almost 2 years since I've seen this movie. Maybe subconsciously, my mind's trying to tell me something. Then we got Schindler's List. I mean, this is a movie that should almost be a required viewing in high school, in my opinion. I think you should have to watch this movie by the time you graduate high school. It's that important. It's Spielberg's best directed movie. It is a phenomenal movie. I'm not going S tier because it's not one of my favorites, but it's an A tier movie undeniably. I'm gonna put it right here, probably above Parasite. I mean, Schindler's List, it is a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking watch. It's disturbing, but it's so important to learn about the atrocities that took place with the Holocaust. It is a must-watch movie. It's heartbreaking, but it's powerful stuff by the end. Next, we got Rain Man. I would go B tier with Rain Man. I've seen it once. It's an iconic movie. People reference it all the time. You got Dustin Hoffman winning that Oscar, Tom Cruise in here. It's feel-good comfort by the end, but also sad and sort of upsetting. But I would say it's a B tier movie, like right in the middle of the pack. I'd probably go... Right now, I'd say like right here with Rain Man. Solid watch, but nothing too memorable. I haven't seen it in years. Rocky is an all-timer for me. In fact, I'm putting Rocky at the back of S tier. This is one of the most uplifting movies ever made. It's the ultimate underdog story. It's one of the best sports movies. It was an underdog itself at the Oscars. Rocky's an American hero. This is a classic film that everyone has to see. Anyone could relate to the story of a guy just trying to make it in the world. It'll remind you to chase your dreams and go get after it. Then we got The Departed. This is the movie that Scorsese finally won the Oscar for, and it's maybe my favorite of his. I love The Departed so much that I am going to go S tier with it. I'm going to put The Departed at about right here for me. It blew my mind the first time I saw it. There's like a series of events in the final act of the movie where your jaw drops more and more each time they unfold. But it's just a really unique concept. You know, you've got a cop who's dirty, and then you've got a cop going undercover with the mob, and so it's like a role reversal situation. Nicholson, Leo, and Matt Damon all should have been nominated for Oscars. Wahlberg was the one of the bunch to get nominated, but it is an elite mob film, and it's one of my personal favorite mob films ever made. It's actually probably the most rewatchable Scorsese movie alongside The Wolf of Wall Street to me. Then we've got The Godfather Part 2 to round this out. I'm gonna go right behind The Godfather Part 1 with this because I've always preferred 1 to 2, but I gotta rewatch both soon. I'm much older than I was when I first watched these. I think I'd have a much deeper appreciation for them. I feel like my time is coming for a rewatch of Godfather 1 and 2 and then watch 3 for the first time because I've never seen it. I've heard it's awful. I'm not looking forward to it, but yeah, The Godfather 1 and 2 belong next to each other. But that does it for my tier list ranking of all the best picture winners I've seen. I hope to watch all the best picture winners one day, or at least a good chunk of them. But what is your favorite best picture winner? Let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And if you want to watch movies and TV shows with me, you can do so on my Patreon, link down below. Your support over there means the world and allows me to continue making these videos that I love so much. But that's going to do it. Thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.